Accounting Standards Codification provides you with a comprehensive guide to generally accepted accounting principles according to the FASB. And what the FASB has managed to do now is create this online database through which you can look up any of the FASB or most of the SEC rules related to accounting and find out how to account for something. But using it can be a little challenge. So in this video, I'm going to explain a little bit about how to use the Accounting Standards Codification, and then from here I suggest that you do some of the exercises to try out and experiment with it a little bit. Basically, you'll need to go to this website. It's www.aaahq.org/asclogin.cfm, and this link is on Blackboard. First thing you do is click on enter your username and password, which is in Blackboard, and then click on FASB Accounting Standards Codification, or ASC. Then read through the whole license, and once you've read it, if you agree with the terms and conditions, then click accept. And the FASB codification provides you with 4 ways to find information. The first one is through a code number. The second is through an outline. The third one is through the original rule, which was created for it. And the fourth one is for search. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to go through the 4 different methods that you can use to find information. For example, let's suppose that we are looking for code section. Someone refers to code section 740-10-25. Then here you would type in 740-10-25 and then click on Go To. And then the codification is going to give you that section. And as you can see here, section 25 is actually pretty long. 2 things to know. First is sections that begin with S are SEC, Security and Exchange Commission rules. They apply only to public companies. The next thing to know is pending content. Pending content is content that has been written and approved, but it's not yet effective. What you'll usually see under pending content is you'll see a P and an N with a date next to each. P, as shown here, is for public companies, and this would be for fiscal periods beginning after December 16, 2017. So in other words, in practice, this would apply to 2018. Then N refers to non-public companies, and in this case, and I'm generalizing when I say public and non-public, but in general, companies with publicly issued securities would be public, and companies without, well, other companies would be considered non-public. The FASB rules, you can look them up, are a little more complicated than that. This, for non-public companies, would be December 16, 2018, meaning that this would take effect for the calendar year 2019 if someone's on the calendar year. So for now, this is the requirement. And this is the new requirement that's coming in. There's another requirement coming in the following year. So that's the first way to enter data, is by entering the code number, and every paragraph has a code. Codes can be 3 or 4 numbers long. The first 3 numbers is called the topic. The next 10 numbers is called the subtopic, and then the third number I think is called the section. 25 here is the section, and then below that I think it's called the subsection. Anyway, that's one approach, and every paragraph in the entire Accounting Standards Code has this number system. The next system that you can use, this is the second system, is an outline system. And here you can see all the different pieces of the outline. The outline is organized according to general principles, which is actually quite thin, the way the code is written right now. Presentation consists of many sections, one for each financial statement, and then the notes, and then certain accounting issues that are sort of financial statement wide. So for example, accounting changes, error corrections, changing prices, which would be inflation, earnings per share reporting, interim reporting. I didn't mean to press that, but here you can see what's for interim reporting, limited liability entities, personal financial statements, and so on. Segment reporting, you can see is here. Then there's assets, liabilities, and equity, and revenue. This is very important now. Notice that under revenue, there's two sections. There's 605 and 606. 605 is the existing revenue recognition standards. 606 are the new revenue recognition standards, which are scheduled to kick in next year. Also under liabilities, there's two sections of leases. Excuse me, that's under broad transactions. Sorry about that. Expenses, you have cost of sales and services, compensation, other expenses, R&D, and income taxes. Broad transactions, here you go. Here's the leases. There's leases 840, and this is very important. There's the new lease accounting is in section 842. So some of the broad transaction categories are business combinations, consolidations, derivatives and hedging, financial instruments, and fair value measurement. Lease accounting, as I said, related parties, reorganization, subsequent events. And then there was also a section for industry. This is where industry accounting is unusual. And the FASB here has about 15 different industries that it writes special accounting rules for. There's also a glossary. So you can enter anything that you're interested in here. For example, suppose I'm interested in projected benefit obligation. So I type on P, scroll down. There it is, projected benefit obligation. And so the second approach to finding things would be to look here. So for example, suppose that I'm interested in, let's say I'm interested in the new revenue recognition rules. So we go to revenue, the new rules is section 606. And all of the rules are in here. Now if you want to see them, you click on, here we'll just break down the outline for you. The easiest thing to do is to click on join all sections. And then it will list for you all of the standards. Know that this is all pending because it doesn't kick in for public companies until the calendar year 2018, non-public companies 2019. So here's the new revenue recognition standard in case you're interested. That's the second approach, is through the outline. The third approach is by looking at the original rules. So before the code, the main rule were FASB pronouncements. And here you can see an index of every FASB pronouncement. So when your accounting professor is talking about FASB 95, statement of cash flows, you're going to find that over here. Statement of number 95, statement of cash flows. You want as amended because that has changes for subsequent, that includes subsequent changes that were made. And so this would provide you with the original rule that was created by the FASB. Interesting, at the end of this, you're going to find a section called Basis for Conclusions. I'm not sure where it is. That's not working. But it has a lot of details. If you're interested in how a rule was written or why it is a certain way, you look in Basis for Conclusions. After, what the FASB has started doing with the codification is it created the accounting standards updates. And so if you want to see the individual rules again, you go to the ASU accounting standard updates. These are all the updates for this year. The really big update this year has been, for some reason that's not opening, intangibles goodwill. It's simplifying the test for goodwill impairment. So if you're interested in seeing this rule, you click on it over here. And here's a PDF that you could look at that has all the details of the new rule. So if someone sells to you, refer to ASU Accounting Standards Update 2017-04. You'll find that over here. Also here, or some of the earlier standards, including AICPA standards. Here are accounting concepts, the concept statements 1 through 8, which explain accounting principles such as revenue, reliability, and so on. Maintenance updates are minor revisions made to clarify relatively minor matters. So that's the third way. Again, the first way is by entering the code number, because every paragraph has a code number. The second way is through this outline, and the third way is by looking up the original standard. The fourth way is by searching. So what you could do is you could also, based on a particular accounting situation that you're dealing with, you can select several search terms and use those search terms to find the proper statement. So suppose that I would like to look something up. So let's say I'm asked about full cost accounting for oil and gas. So I would type in full cost oil gas. It just says that because I was experimenting with it. And I want to find out more about full cost accounting. So I click on go. And then it'll have, here are 28 different results for full cost. And it shows you the results in context. So what you would do is you would read each of these and look for more information. So for example, subtopic addresses interest capitalization under the full cost method of oil and gas. So you click here. And there's not very much that it addresses here, so go to the next one. It's probably the same. Let's go up a little bit. Discontinued operations I don't want. See here, it'll tell you the code 205.2015, 205.2015. This is 932.835.05. Here we go. And here's a little more about, here's a section on full cost accounting. So it tells you full cost accounting is addressed in the Securities and Exchange Commission literature. Now, a little background here. Full cost accounting, in case you're not aware of it, was rejected by the FASB but is allowed by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So if you use full cost accounting, you're actually, which means basically capitalizing unsuccessful oil and gas wells. And the FASB ruled that you can't use full cost accounting, but the SEC disagreed with the FASB and said that you can. Therefore, the rules are really all addressed by the SEC and not by the FASB. But here you can see that at least the FASB told you to go to the SEC if you want to find out more. So that's how the search function would look. And a lot of times what you may need to do, if you pick out something very general, for example, let's say I pick out goodwill. So I search for goodwill and I have 558 choices. What I can do here is I can narrow it down according to area or by a related term. So for example, if I'm interested in impairment of goodwill, I can click here. And now let's suppose I'm interested in footnotes for impairment of goodwill. So I'll click here, presentation, and go. And here you can see information about, this is just for discontinued operations. Presentation of basic diluted shares. Let's see, here we go. According to goodwill impairment loss associated with discontinued operations, see this paragraph, and then go over here. So a lot of times this is going to require looking around. A little background here. Before we had the codification, the FASB used its standards, and basically what you would have to do is you would have to find out you have to look up when the FASB made the rule and then find the rule in there. And a lot of times you would have to look up several different rules. Accounting standards codification is great because it's organized all of these rules in a systematic way that can be searched, and this makes it much easier to find accounting standards. Now, there are other ways to find this information. One approach is, again, the 4 methods that I presented here in the accounting standards codification. Some students choose to do a web search. If you do a web search, the thing to do is find out what the accounting standards code is related to the web search. And if it's a good website, it should tell you what ASC they're talking about. Then use that guidance to go back to the ASC. But in general, generally accepted accounting principles are set by the FASB. And so if you see guidance that's printed by one of the accounting firms, that's not necessarily a source of GAAP. That's just how the accounting firm says you should do it. A better source is the FASB.